So, Nick, this is a huge welcome to the Sales Transformation podcast, but this is the Mastercast series. So this is where we invite master students to actually share their research findings. And I know that you've taken part in our GST events in the past, where some of your research was shared, but this is now the podcast. So, just a huge welcome to the Sales Transformation Podcast Master Series. So thank you, Nick.
Oh, thank you. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. As you know, Phil, I'm a huge advocate of Consalia and the team and the people and the work that you guys do. So yeah, real privilege to have been asked. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's our privilege, in fact, having you on board. And I think it's, the topic of your dissertation is something that I think is going to appeal to a huge number of people who listen into the program, which is sales onboarding. I'm reading it out. I've got your dissertation up here on my screen, Nick, so I can, it's funny with titles, they're always very long, aren't they? And but it's sales onboarding. How can the process of onboarding sales recruits impact upon sales success? So the first question that we normally ask is why this topic? Why was it a topic that was of interest to you? Why was it your concern?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I mean, on a personal level, I started my sales career at 19 years old, and it always stuck with me. I never received what I would call any structured training or development. So I was very lucky to go into a medium-sized business. And there were lots of amazing things that kind of went around that. It was a welcoming environment. The business was run by a person I'd still do have an awful lot of respect for. And I was taught sales in a very unstructured way, without an onboarding program, without any structure. I would say without understanding the values of the business or being encouraged to understand my own values and having to learn as I went. And I think I made a lot of mistakes as a result of that approach. I also learned a lot of things, potentially picked up some bad habits, I would say, reflecting now and looking back. And so it always stuck with me that experience for me didn't feel as it perhaps should have felt. So when it came to dissertation time and picking a subject, I wanted to go with something that actually meant something to me, that I resonated with, that kind of provoked an emotion almost. And on top of that, I'd kind of, having worked for Sharp latterly, which is a big organization, a corporate global business, I had noted that we had a fractured way of onboarding salespeople. And so it felt like something that you'll know better than anybody. You're going to invest a lot of time into a dissertation, into the research, into the lit review, into carrying out that project. I wanted to invest my time into something that felt relevant. And this felt like a topic that I was excited to get into, to learn more about and to understand how it could potentially positively impact our business.
Yeah. Nick, I know you've mentioned you work at Sharp, but would you mind sort of telling us a bit more about, which bit of Sharp you work with, and what's your sort of, what was the area of responsibility that you had at the time that you did the dissertation? Because I think your role has maybe changed slightly since we last spoke, perhaps not, but would you mind just sharing what your role is at Sharp?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll have to try and remember now. So, yeah, so my role, my title is sales director, and I cover the Northwest region. So the day-to-day role is around developing a sales team to achieve results in our world. And some of those results are your standard metrics, things like revenue generation, gross profit generation. So we're working with around 4,000 customers of all different shapes and sizes. For those that don't know, many people know Sharp as a consumer electronics company. So we have a bit of a running joke that anytime we tell people we work for Sharp, it's Sharp TV, Sharp Microwaves, Manchester United sponsorship, all that kind of stuff. But what we actually do, what I'm involved in, is office technology. So we position ourselves as an office technology provider. We're providing our clients with managed print solutions, managed IT services, audiovisual solutions, etc. So my role within that is to manage sales teams. It's about performance. It's about development. It's about achieving numbers. But additionally to that, I manage our national new business team as well. So there's a bit of a specialism there around the way that we ironically onboard new clients. Yeah. We find and bring new clients on, and we're more scientific about that than we've ever been. So I'm really enjoying overseeing that side of things. There's the strategic element to what we do. So working with sales leadership across the UK to make sure that we are going to market in the right way, that we understand who our customers are, who our ideal customers are, to make sure we've got an L&D plan in place to develop our people as best that we can. So titled sales director, but quite a diverse role. And I really enjoy it that way. I like to get involved in as many different things as I can.
Yeah. So I think given that context, obviously the whole sales onboarding kind of process is something that would have been close to your heart in terms of recruiting new sales teams and new people into the organization as well. So something that was really relevant. Okay, so thank you for sharing about your previous experience. So you came from a position where you felt that you hadn't had perhaps the best induction process. So perhaps we could focus a bit more into the kind of research approach that you took, because I think you did some quite interesting analysis of best practices, from outside of Sharp in order to start to shape some of your thinking. What you found from your literature review about, for example, things like the cost of onboarding salespeople, the business case for why this is a topic that's so important, I think is something that would be great if you could dust off your memory from your dissertation. It'd be great if you could just share what some of the key findings were and whether they surprised you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, similarly, it feels like an eternity ago now. It was probably a couple of years ago, I think, that
a couple of years. It's not that long,
Yeah,
it's only a couple of years ago.
It feels a lot longer. I'm not sure Manchester United have won many games in that period of time.
No,
in football terms, it feels like a long time. But no, it was a really interesting topic for me to dive into. So a bit of context as well, really. I had not done anything like this before. So I never went to university. I didn't do a degree. So I kind of came about doing a master's without the experience of ever having done a lit review. So the first thing I had to learn was how to do a lit review. But yeah, I found that the most interesting findings really were I've got this figure of 30% attrition in sales, 30% of annual attrition, which is a lot in the context of going out and finding the right people. So identifying talent and the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into that recruitment to bring salespeople into the business, making sure they've got the right skill set, making sure they've got all the relevant, sort of KSBs almost. Management spending time with newly recruited salespeople to bring them up to speed. So to make sure that they know everything they need to know. Only for that not to work, and for you to then have to do it on repeat. So the amount of businesses that are out there having to do this on repeat, wasting time, effort, money, resource. The other statistic that I read in the lit review was this figure of it costing up to £300,000 for a sales hire. I couldn't believe that when I read it. I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. That's an awful lot of money potentially being sort of wasted. And so found all that stuff really, really interesting. It made me think that if the stakes are really high. Those attrition rates are high. That cost is high. If my project could help to find a potential solution, then there would be huge savings. There'd be quicker time to success for the individual. The sooner that you could potentially bring in somebody but onboard them successfully, equip them with all of the skills and the knowledge and the information that they need, then that attrition rate could be reduced and that cost of hire could be greatly reduced.
I mean, I think you make some interesting observation based on your literature research about cost and time, and how long does it take to ramp up a salesperson as well from when they join. I think you talk about 15, you have this 15-month period where you might have a high-performing salesperson or a performing salesperson, and then you may get into that other cyclical process of them leaving and perhaps moving elsewhere. So I think the business case for selecting the right people, and then once you have selected the right people, also then having an onboarding program that would be, I think you call it best in class, is huge. You did quite a lot of internal sort of investigation as well, I think, in terms of how it was currently being done at Sharp. And I don't know if you wanted to kind of share some of the observations you've made from your analysis. And I know the situation has changed hugely since then, largely, I guess, based on the recommendations made by your project. But when quite interested in the sort of survey research that you started to do to actually look at the experiences of people from within the organization about induction training, and so
yeah, absolutely. Just before I do move on to that, Phil, one of the other points as well that I'd stumbled upon in the lit review was that there was actually a lot of literature on the recruitment process and how to recruit salespeople. There was plenty of literature on training and development, so sort of ongoing training and development, but there was very little literature on the actual specific, the onboarding piece. So the bit between the two, really, it was almost like, if you look at it in a timeline perspective, the first bit, the recruitment, the kind of the end bit being, or not the end, but the next bit along being the training and development. But it was that specifically that piece around the onboarding where there was just very little. It made me think there's a knowledge gap and an opportunity for me to kind of add to that knowledge, if you like, or to kind of create some of that knowledge around that. So in terms of the research, the internal research, it was very interesting. So I'd decided to kind of do a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. So one of the methods I used, the method I used for the quantitative aspect was to survey. So it was to send out a survey using an online tool to our entire sales population of, I think it was 96 people at the time.
96 you mentioned.
And one of the kind of key challenges around that was going to be, for me, we have quite an established team at Sharp. We don't get, we talked about that attrition rate being around 30%. Ours is actually a lot less than that. So we've got quite an established team, and my concern really around some of this stuff was the people that are time served. How well are they going to remember their onboarding process, or lack of, 25, 30 years ago? So I don't know about you, but I struggle to remember what happened last week sometimes. So I had a slight concern with the survey, but the idea with the survey was to try to understand that starting point. It was to get as close to that can as, but where are we now? What's the current state of play? What feedback can we get from the individuals that have been onboarded by Sharp into a sales role? Are we good? Are we bad? Are we consistent? Are we inconsistent? Is there a measured way that we do it? So I sent out this survey online. The response rate was 48, just under 50%. which actually I was quite pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah. Well, that's a big sample, from the 96, it's quite a large number that you've, half of the organization. So, yeah.
Yeah. So half of the organization, and the idea was to try to understand how we were kind of handling onboarding. Now, key bit of information, we are split regionally as a business. So
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that my bit is the Northwest.
Yeah.
And then I have two counterparts. So there are three of us in total, sales directors
Right.
that manage bits of the country. So what I wanted to do was to make sure I got snapshots across all three of those teams and make sure that I got responses from representatives of those three teams. But it was to understand really how do we approach it? What do we cover? Or what was covered in that onboarding process? What wasn't covered? What were your overall thoughts? Would you consider it successful? Was it memorable? Did we tell you about the company values? Did we tell you about, sort of what's expected of you in the role? And actually, the findings were really interesting. So do you want me to discuss the findings?
Yeah, it would be great to know more. But just before we do, of course, you're involving the sales teams of your fellow sales directors. I guess they needed to buy into the fact that you were doing the research. Were they equally interested in sort of the research program that you were embarking upon here? Were they supportive?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm very lucky in the sense that I never take it for granted that I work for a company whereby we've got a really good culture in that sense. We pull together really, really well. When it's best to, we operate really strongly as one team.
Okay.
There's also sometimes benefit in operating regionally. And actually, my two colleagues, my fellow sales directors, we are very different in our approaches. So one thing I was mindful of is that we all have a current way of onboarding salespeople into our regions, and we all think that's the right way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it that way.
Yeah.
So there's almost that acknowledgement that there's three different ways of doing it.
Okay.
And three individuals that all think that their way is probably the best way to do it. So I think it's like anything, anybody that's been on that master's journey and handled that dissertation and done a deep dive into something that's going on within the business, you have to handle it with kid gloves. You can't storm in and say, actually, you two are not doing a very good job of this, so I'm going to do a project and then we're all going to do it really well. So I think for me, it was, yes, it's just about respecting that everybody's got a slightly different view and a slightly different way of doing things, but hopefully gaining that buy-in that if we could find an established way and a consistent and structured way to handle this, then the benefit would be there for all of us.
Okay.
If we can reduce attrition rates, if we can reduce how much money we spend, if we can, ramp up, if we can sort of decrease that ramp up time to success, we all win. So yeah, to answer your question, I think I was able to get buy-in from my colleagues, which was good. Right.
So for Sharp, it wasn't really the attrition that was a concern. It was more the ramp up, is it? Because attrition was quite low compared to other companies.
Yeah, I think it was the ramp up. It was that engagement piece as well. So again, slightly nuanced in our business is that we're in a transitional period.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were to kind of Sharp 10 to 15 years ago, we were a photocopier company, and I use that term quite intentionally because that's what we did. We sold photocopiers, and they came with a service contract. And that was how it worked. There are some complexities around that, but it was quite simplistic in that sense. So a potted history in the last 10 to 15 years, digitization has meant that our business has had to transform because I'm sure people who are watching or listening to this will appreciate that businesses, organizations are looking to print less. Sustainability is now massive. It's high on everybody's agenda, and quite rightly so as well. Digitization has meant that for us, people print less, people are going to buy less printers, and ultimately we needed to find a way to pivot as a business. And so the way we've done that is to diversify our portfolio, which is amazing. You know, it gives us far more opportunity to talk to our customers about the many projects that they've got on. The challenge around that for salespeople is that many grew up in the print industry. And so we're now asking people that signed up to sell photocopiers for a living and have done that very successfully for many, many years to do something that's completely different. And of course, some people go on that journey and want to go on that journey, and some don't. And that's okay. That's quite normal. But recruitment forms a fairly key part of that change. So as we recruit, we want to recruit people that can do all of the things that we need them to do. And so I think it was the reason, it wasn't the attrition that's the issue. It was more about, as we recruit, we want to find the best people that we can for what we want to do today.
Yeah.
We want to onboard them in a new way. So not the way that we onboarded somebody 10, 15 years ago and probably had got into bad habits of just rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
But we need to find a way that we can onboard somebody that really demonstrates what Sharp are today, and we can give them all of the skills on day one, as opposed to drip feeding them out over the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's very clear and so fantastic. Okay, so let's move on to the research now and the findings. So I think you've got some really interesting sort of survey data that came back as well. So it'd be great for you to share what some of your key findings were from the survey.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, lots of findings, and it was really, really interesting. Some things I expected, some I perhaps didn't. So firstly, the overall effectiveness rating came in at 52%. So the sample of respondents gave roughly a 5 out of 10 grade.
Okay.
To the way that they had been onboarded. So for me, that was an interesting starting point because that feels low.
Yeah,
I would argue that a business should be aiming for 8+ in that area. I think 9 would feel maybe a bit artificial and inflated, perhaps, because the reality of working in a big business is that some people love what you do, some people are indifferent, and some people don't like it, and that's right. Okay. And obviously, you try to limit the amount of people that don't like things. But yeah, for me, I would be looking at that to be certainly 7.5 to 8 out of 10 for me to say, okay, we are where we want to be. So 5 is clearly lower.
Yeah.
So my main aim was to understand what we had covered in previous onboarding process. Yeah. So I created a list of various different things that and maybe there were 12 items on that list, but 12 things that you would find in a Sharp onboarding, in an induction process. And the ones that came out as being the ones that people remembered the most were product training, health and safety, and company policy.
Right.
So all of which are important. Okay, so if you're going to go and start a new job, you need to know the health and safety rules. You need to know what to do if the fire alarm goes off. You need to know what the policies are, the company policies around, I guess things like data security and the many policies that you need to know coming into a business like Sharp. And you, of course, going into a sales role, need to know what the products and solutions do. So those things need to be there. But my instant thought was these perhaps shouldn't be the most memorable things. If you go to start working a new business, that should be exciting. It should create an energy. It should be memorable. It should be something in my mind that you go home to your partner or your friend or your parents and you say, guess what? I started at this new business and we've done some really cool things. I've learned some amazing things. And it struck me that policy and health and safety perhaps wouldn't be a leading fact.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'd light up anyone's particular fire, those topics, but
not mine or yours, Phil. I know that. I don't you only have to know that. So, and safe to assume for most other people as well. So that was where we were. So we'd got this 5-ish out of 10 grade, and we'd got this list of things that we knew were being covered that people could call off and say, oh yeah, we definitely covered that, and we definitely covered that.
Yeah.
So the next aspect of this then was, what did the respondents think were important? So what in their minds do they think should be covered?
Yeah.
And what would be the most memorable aspects of that? So the things that came out in that section were things like company values,
Right.
what's expected of you, i.e.
Right.
this role. So what are the
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of nuances in the role? Maybe things
Yeah.
like KPIs and things like that. So what do
Yeah.
you want them to do? And then the individual's own values, goals, and objectives.
Right.
So the people-focused bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, for clarity, the idea of turning up at work, and rather than somebody kind of throwing health and safety information at me, somebody trying to find out about me and what makes me tick and what I'm trying to achieve and what my own goals are and how I
Right.
operate as a person.
Yeah.
So those, and the other one to mention was product training. So product training made an appearance in both. We were doing
Yeah.
training, which is great, but also people felt that should be covered.
Yeah.
So what kind of, I think what the data showed there from the survey was that we were handling the onboarding process in a very, what I would call, a black and white way.
Yeah.
And we needed to bring some color to that process.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting. And I mean, it's when you talk about company values and personal values, we obviously talk about that a lot, as you know, on the master's program. But was that something that you had suggested might be covered, or is that something that you had got from the survey data, that it was something that they wanted? You know, the inductees, if you like, wanted to know more about company values and, you know, how will you work with me to let me flourish within the company that I'm now working for?
Yeah, so the everything was selected off a list that I had put together,
Okay.
and ran by some colleagues, really, to make sure that I'd done
Okay.
it all. So this list comprised of all of the things that I've just mentioned there. So they were
Yeah, yeah.
categorized down. But I think, interestingly, to link these things together, which is important to do, I wouldn't have thought to have added that particular item around values and goals and objectives if it weren't for my master's experience and my experience learning about myself, as you just mentioned. So through my master's experience, because obviously this dissertation comes right at the end, by this point we've already done 6 modules on the master's program. And my experience of the master's program was that it was one that made me highly reflective. It was one that made me look internally at my own values, at my goals, and what I want to achieve, both in my career, professionally, but also personally. So certainly I, by that point, had developed my own feelings around what I think I would want. And so, yeah, it was important to me to capture some of that stuff.
Right.
As well as making sure that it was balanced from the perspective that, look, an induction / onboarding, yes, we can make it person focused. That can be an option, but also we are going to have to make sure that we do we do the basics. You know, we cover the two. And what one of the recommendations, and I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead with this, that I came to, was that the two things should be very different. So there should be an induction process that the people team or the HR team would handle, that would cover all, you know, the generic stuff that you would have to know, whether you're an administrator or a cleaner or a salesperson or a senior executive. But that there should be a sales onboarding, a specific sales onboarding that sits next to that. Is not wrapped into it, but it sits separately and it covers all of those other, I would argue, more interesting and energy provoking activities.
So is there anything more that you'd like to share about some of the findings from your research before I move on to the kind of, did you get a chance to actually take the findings and implement it into a new way of inducting salespeople at Sharp?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess the other bit I would mention with the findings would be the so I did the interviews as well.
Yeah,
So mentioned earlier about making sure that the data was, I guess, as accurate as we could make it. So
yes,
sat alongside the surveys, I also interviewed 3 account managers,
right,
one from each of the different regions.
yeah,
So they were kind of 20 to 30-minute discussions that were
yeah,
more of a deep dive, held over Teams, because I wanted,
yeah,
there's obviously a regional aspect, and I wanted to make sure there was a
yeah,
consistency across all of those conversations. And yeah, it was obviously the process then of triangulating
yeah,
the data that came from the interviews and the surveys. The data from the interviews very much backed up what we'd seen in the surveys.
okay. And were there differences from region to region in terms of output, or did you find sort of common areas?
Yeah, there was a mixture of the two. I mean, the common areas would tend to be those that were handled directly by the people team. So
Okay,
what I would
yeah, yeah,
call the induction-based bits and pieces. The commonality across the two was that they were very much, again, in the interviews, they were the bits that came up. So when I asked the person directly, what can you remember from your first few weeks at
yeah,
Sharp, as quite an
yeah,
open, generic question, um, it was very much, well, on day one, I started, I was given a tour around the building, I was shown where the toilets are. I was taken to the warehouse and shown how to lift a box, for example.
okay,
Use the knees, not the back, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So the themes through the interviews were very, very similar in that
okay,
for me, it was that bit was quite consistent. Where the inconsistencies came were on the approach to product training, for example. So in
okay,
one of the interviews, somebody was kind of was given a lot of product training in the first 2 weeks, and it was quite an intense 2 weeks
yeah,
where they were expected to remember all the feeds and the speeds and the
yeah,
nuances around the different models of photocopier, for example. And in another case, that happened over a 3-month period.
right,
Yeah, one of them felt planned, one of them was unplanned. So
yeah,
the interviews kind of helped me to see that, okay, we don't have a
yeah,
consistent way of doing this. The experience is very different based on where you are in the country, for example.
yeah,
Um, and it occurred to me that that shouldn't be the case.
yeah,
We should have, however we do it, there should be a consistent way.
yeah,
If 3 different people start on the same day in 3 different parts of the country, we should have an identified way
yeah,
that we onboard that person to give them all of the skills and the knowledge that they need, but also the best chance to succeed in this business.
yeah,
And if they were to move, I don't know, say somebody relocated from London to Manchester, they should move from one area to another where there are consistencies around approach
yeah,
on things like this. So yeah, so the research and enabled me to see, I think, what I thought was the case anyway,
yeah,
but it really helped me to understand on a much greater
yeah,
level. Ultimately, this isn't about what I think. This is about what the research tells me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so that was important. I think, Phil, the other thing I mentioned really quickly before we move on is to say that one of the other issues that I felt we had was a lack of diversity across our sales team as well.
oh yeah, yeah,
So that was another key driver for me, was to understand, how do we start to diversify this team? It was, I mentioned earlier, 96, a team of 96 salespeople, and I think 90 plus of those were white middle-aged males.
right,
There is nothing wrong with being a white middle-aged male. I am one.
yeah,
But in 2023, as it may have been at the time,
yeah,
that felt to me like we were absolutely behind the times here.
right,
We are not it's not an intentional thing. There's no systematic problem at Sharp.
yeah,
There's no sinister thing hiding underneath the surface.
yeah,
But we are not proactively handling that. There's something that we're not doing that's not enabling women, people from other sort of other cultural backgrounds,
Yeah.
people of, I think, younger people as well. It would be fair to say younger people. We're not creating those opportunities for those people to come and work in our sales function.
Yeah.
And so it felt to me that a little bit around the way we recruit, of course, which I didn't focus on for this project, but the recruitment piece, but then the way that we onboard those people, because it occurred to me that, if you bring a young person into a business now with the expectations that young people have around the workplace and what they want to get from the workplace, if we do a really rubbish job of onboarding them, I expect that they would leave quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so it was piecing all of that stuff together, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So creating an induction program that would appeal to a more diverse intake, of applicant. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good. I remember you made that comment when you presented at GST about diversity. Okay, so you did this amazing piece of research. You got the data in. What happened after that?
Yeah, so well, what did happen after that? So firstly, I thoroughly enjoyed the process.
Okay.
I enjoyed the process. It was great. And, you will know better than anybody that it's challenging, it's
Yeah.
the master's program is one of the best things I've ever done.
It's
when I look
nice of
back,
you to say.
when I
Thank you.
reflect on the benefits and the kind of that transformational thing that it was for me, it's one of the best things I've ever done, and I would advocate it to anybody that is in a similar position to mine, or in any sales leadership position. I would advocate it.
Yeah.
But it also is challenging, and it's meant to be. Meant to push an individual to grow and develop, and so.
So your dissertation, such kind comments, Nick, and thank you so much. But your dissertation sort of highlighted what a best-in-class induction program should look like.
Yeah.
And I know that one of the challenges sometimes with dissertation projects is you surface, or you get much more clarity around the problem you're trying to solve, which is what you've done around induction. And it's not till the dissertation is being completed. You've done your dissertation, you've got your master's now, you've graduated and everything else. But it's actually, the journey continues, beyond. So I'm interested to know the beyond story, so how have you managed to take these learnings and actually started to look at changing the way that you've gone about induction? Because I know that you've done lots of interesting things. And are you able to see the impact of some of those problems that we're trying to solve, I'd say, around diversity or ramp up time or whatever? So interested to know what's happened as a consequence of your research.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, as I say, really, it was kind of deep breath. For me, it was deep breath, dissertation complete, master's journey completed, which I was over the moon with. And then, like you say, it was what's next.
Right.
It was what's next, and that was why I went on this journey in the first place, because I wanted to hopefully affect some change. Positive change. So yeah, I'd created what I felt was some knowledge around something that we were perhaps ineffective at. It worked to a level, but it could be improved. It absolutely could be improved. And working for a business like Sharp, it's a big organization. It's an organization with structure, and it's one whereby change is probably historically been maybe challenging to effect. So the next challenge for me was to make sure I'd got the ability to kind of do that internally. So it was to share these findings with senior leadership.
Right.
And to say, listen, I know we've done this a certain way for a very long time. And one might argue that actually we're not terrible at it. It's, we don't have a huge problem, but what we do have is a big opportunity.
Right.
A huge opportunity to really excel at this. So my recommendations that I'd formulated were, you know, if I list some of them, Phil, if you don't mind, it would be, you know, that we onboard in cohorts,
Yeah.
that we bring teams of people in together. So instead of piecemeal recruitment,
Yeah.
where somebody retires and we go and recruit one person,
Yeah.
could we save them up maybe?
Yeah.
Get to a number like 4, 5, or 6 and bring a group of people in together to go on a journey, to go on an experience.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
to kind of bounce off each other.
Easier to create an experience when there's more than one. You know, in that sense, you get. Yeah, I can see the logic of that.
I think so. I think, yeah, quite.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not the new person. You probably feel less pressure. You're part of a team.
Yeah.
So things like, you know, with onboarding, could we plan and communicate the plan in advance rather than just kind of, right, you turn up on day one and, right, this is what you're going to do today and maybe tomorrow. But actually, this is what the first 3 months is going to look like.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll do this in week 1 and then we'll move on to this. So this whole idea that when you turn up on day 1, I thought it'd be really comforting for somebody to say, let's sit down, let's have a chat. Here's what the first quarter of your employment is going to look like. Well, here's what we'll cover. Here's a timeline, and here's what you'll be able to do by the end of that period. Talked earlier about separating the sales content from the compliance stuff.
Yeah.
So running the two separately, achieving kind of consistency across all teams, overhauling the content, bringing in some kind of mentoring program. And I was lucky in that I was able to kind of, I went about designing what I called a sales academy program.
Yeah.
So all of those recommendations led me down this route of thinking, so if we could bring in a cohort of people that we bring in, I will write a program based on the findings from my research, and the program will be informed by the research and the things that the lit review and the surveys and the interviews, the things that I'd identified, I will incorporate all of those things. And I've said before, I think I said at the stock exchange at GST, that the single hardest sale or the most successful sale I've ever completed in my career, nearly 20 years, was the internal one, to be able to launch
the academy.
To gain that buy-in, because it was, look, it's an expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
Is it more expensive than the traditional way? It's hard to say, because in the traditional way, a lot of the costs are hidden.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the recommendations were this idea of a sales academy, where I wrote a sales program, a training program that was 7 modules.
Right.
Key difference to it was that product training and solutions training came at the very end. So the first 6 modules, it started off on Welcome to Sharp.
Yeah.
And it was a real deep dive on who we are as a business, what our values are, what our mission statement is, what it feels like to be a sharp person, what it looks like, how a sharp person acts. Then it was the individual's own goals and objectives and their values, helping them to understand themselves.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So for me, it was a very different program. It was sales training with a difference. It was very original. I'd written it. I didn't take an existing framework. I wrote it myself.
Yeah.
And we then went about creating this cohort. So working with a third-party company at the time, we ran an assessment day.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day. It was one of the best days of my career. I absolutely loved it, because we walked into this assessment day that was predominantly aimed at graduates.
Yeah.
And I walked into a truly diverse room.
Okay.
Truly
Fantastic.
diverse. There was 30 individuals in this room that had turned up for this assessment day.
Wow.
To apply for a job on our academy, sales academy program. And it was a truly diverse room. And that felt, for some people, that'd be second nature. They see it all the time. For me, this was like a seminal moment, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we went about this assessment day, lots of different activities, interviews, team building. You've probably seen these things before.
Yeah.
And it was great. And there was a panel of us. So I'd brought 4 colleagues in from different people whose opinions I felt would really help on the day. And we identified a cohort of 8 individuals from that day.
Right.
That would come and be the first cohort for our academy sales program.
Yeah.
4 male, 4 female.
Okay.
Not
Fantastic.
intentionally, it just so happened that the best
Yeah.
individuals, the ones that shone,
Yeah.
the configuration, which was fantastic. And yeah, a few weeks later, they started their journey at Sharp.
Wow. Amazing.
One didn't show on day one.
Okay.
Okay, that's how, something happened. Clearly, I don't know what we did do some investigation, but we ended up with a cohort of 7.
Yeah.
And they delivered the program, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It was intensive.
Yeah.
These young individuals came into the business and they just breathed. They brought ideas. We did all sorts of crazy stuff. We sort of delivered a live radio show.
Yeah, I remember you saying. Amazing.
Great
Yeah.
to manage. So the program, as well as involving training, it also involved lots of projects and,
Yeah.
for example, a mystery shopping project. So in the first week, I sent them all off to go
Yeah.
and do a mystery shopping experience and to come back
Fantastic.
and report, things like what they'd seen that they thought were amazing,
Yeah.
that happened that they didn't think were great. Would they buy from that business as a result of which?
Yeah.
So we did that. We lots of presentations and practice. Lots of time spent around various offices. So I got them around the UK,
Yeah.
meeting people in different departments. We sent them off to do logistics jobs and engineering
Okay.
jobs and accounts
Right.
jobs. And so they had a good understanding of how the other departments within the business work.
Yeah.
So this really diverse program. I could talk about it all day, but we obviously can't do that. But so
Yeah.
today, pushing 2.5 years down the line, we still have 4 of those 7
Fantastic. Yeah.
the 3 that have left on great terms because it was the right thing for them. And I always acknowledged that we're not going to have these 7 individuals forever. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I said from day one that whilst you're with us for however long that might be, let's have a great time. Let's learn. And when you walk out of this door at some point, my objective is that you've had an amazing experience and that you leave bigger than when we found you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the program. That's what we've done.
Right. How amazing.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it is a great story. I mean, what's nice about the story now, and I think sort of looking, well, we didn't interview you on this topic straight after your dissertation. You've had the chance now of having a couple of years to reflect back and see that, 4 out of the 7 have stayed, and can see the benefits of that induction for them, which is great. Yeah, which is really sort of great to see. So I don't know. I think we're getting towards the end of our time, Nick, on the interview. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you about your journey and about your findings and so on? Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's been comprehensive. I mean, it's as I mentioned earlier, Phil. I always feel like when you and I are in a room, we could talk all day about these things. And yes, you're best bringing me to a stop. But no, I think that I touched on it earlier. It genuinely has been a transformational experience for me. I've learned so much, and the feeling of making a difference is something I live for. I imagine a lot of people that watch or listen to this podcast are involved in sales in
they will be.
And a lot of the time we focus on KPIs and numbers and revenue and targets and all that stuff. And we have to do that ultimately. It's really important. But it's the bits in between that I love, and working and getting to know these individuals that I wouldn't know but for the master's journey.
Yeah.
These people wouldn't be in my life. And we play football together now. Some of us, we run together. We
Okay.
have, there's a social aspect to what we do. And, I'm seeing some of these young people move out of home with parents, buy
Yeah, yeah.
cars, go on nice holidays. And for me, that's all out of a dissertation project.
Yeah.
Really.
Fantastic.
That's the way I like to look back on it. I
Yeah.
mean, these people have achieved that themselves. I haven't
Yeah.
done that for them. But creating a platform
Yeah.
was the thing. But also, it's the greater impact as well across the wider team. It's everybody that's been touched in one way or another
Right.
by those individuals that we were able to bring in
Yeah.
and retain through the
Yeah.
power of a structured onboarding program,
Yeah.
which looping back to the whole purpose in the first place of the
Yeah.
dissertation. But it's everybody in the organization, because they've brought lots of life and lots of energy,
Yeah.
lots of new ideas.
That's great.
And yeah, it's just been a really cool journey. And as you know, along the way, there's been some other really, being a privilege to speak at GST was a career
Yeah.
high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being
No,
on
it was fantastic. Absolutely, Nick. And yeah, just fantastic to keep and catch up with your news as well. But yeah, being able to provide that sort of platform for enabling others to grow. I mean, that's why we enjoy, the Masters. We've created a platform, but it's you that's gone and done it and shared some new insights on a topic that I think is going to be relevant to almost every sales director. How to handle that sort of onboarding piece. So I can't thank you enough, Nick, for joining us. And I think that probably brings us up to the end of the podcast. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you at next year's GST.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Phil. It's been a privilege. Always great to catch up and to chat anything sales. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at GST.
Yeah. Okay. Cheerio then, Nick.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.